Hello, lovely. Welcome to the Find a Lovely Life podcast, a safe place for all self love journeys. I'm your host, Monica Rodriguez, and for the past 7 years, I've been on a mission to learn how to love myself. Healing can be a really lonely journey, especially when you don't know where to start. So let's figure things out, cherish words that guide us, and of course, I'll share some of my lovely life lessons along the way. If you're looking for inspirational stories, conversations with some lovely souls, and a little life advice, I think you found the right place. Or maybe it found you. Let's try our best and find a lovely life together. Hi, lovely. Welcome to another episode. Did you think this was going to be one and done? I did too. I think the hardest part was actually deciding to do it and then launching it. And then I was like, okay, I did it. I'm doing a podcast. And then planning out who else I wanted to interview. I kind of had a sense of the first few couple of people I wanted to have on. Want to do this in a monthly basis, at least to start with my current spinning plates. Thank you for everyone that's listened to the first episode. And if this is the first time you're hearing my voice, hello. I think for this episode, there are a couple of things that sort of tend to pop up in at least my self love journey that I feel like are reoccurring themes that no matter what phase or chapter or season I am in my life, they're kind of like a tethered sort of pulse that continues to beat the heart of the self love journey. One of those is sort of starting new life chapters and what that means for each time you kind of the wheel turns, the season turns. We're kind of almost done with winter, kind of veering into spring, which is one of my favorite seasons aside from my allergies. I'm a spring chicken. So is my dog who's got the itchies. I like to say it's Apoquil season for all the dog owners out there. But what I really wanted to talk about this episode is sort of how life chapters, whether it's, you're moving to a new city, or you're moving into an apartment on your own, or you're starting college, or you're starting a new job, or whatever sort of marker of new life chapter, and how that can sort of affect your self-love journey, especially because it tends to sort of trigger a lot of past programming, loneliness, uncomfortable moments in silence. Also, just sort of forgetting how far we've come. New life chapters sort of either come to you planned or unplanned. There's not really an in between. They can creep up on you, and you might not be aware that it's happening. And then suddenly it happens, and you have to sort of scramble and figure life out, or you mastermind it and think you have the plan that you want, and then the universe takes over. So I think for me, one of the things I sort of always go back to is checking in with myself to see, am I still sort of on the path that I want now in my life today? Because I think sometimes I have learned that I tend to follow a path that I might have wanted when I was, let's say, 18, 19, 21, 22, 25, maybe even last year. When I am searching for sort of a sense of groundedness, or I need a new motivator to kind of keep me moving forward, I tend to kind of, at least now, I've realized that I might still be following the path that I used to want 10 years ago. There's a show on Amazon called Harlem. Season 1 was really great. And there's this scene where this super type A character is sitting in her therapist's office. Shout out to therapy. And she's sort of really frustrated with herself because she's at a certain age, and she had this whole life planned out, and she kind of feels like she's sabotaged everything, and she's frustrated with herself because nothing seems to be going as the plan, the plan, the plan, the plan. And her therapist sort of asks her, uh, is this plan that you've been following still one that you want now, or is it the plan that 18-year-old you wanted? And that was like a free therapy session for me because I also, when I was watching that show, sort of felt like I was at a point in my life where I was at a crossroads and I wasn't quite sure where the next path was going to lead me. Felt like it was like an aha moment. I had to pause the show and just sort of reflect on that for myself for a second because I think I started to realize I might have been following a path that I just thought was on autopilot, essentially. And I remember being like 18, 19, graduating from college, and my goal was that I wanted to be financially independent. Like that was my goal coming out of college. And following that blueprint, I felt like I was, that was the only thing I could focus on. And a lot of my dreams got shut out because financial security was the most important thing for me. Following that blueprint for so long, I hit a point where I think my dreams started kind of being a little bit louder and wanted me to follow them. And my dreams sort of, I think along your self love journey, you'll sort of start to realize that you can have multiple dreams and you can change your dream. Your dream can be different. There are dreams I've put on pause, there's dreams that I've rearranged, and new dreams that I have had that have presented themselves to me because I allowed myself to dream, which I didn't allow myself to do for a long time, especially when I was younger and I was so focused on finding a job and having that financial stability. And then all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, is this what I wanted? And I want to be careful with the mentality of thinking that it was all a waste because it was not. There was a point in your life where you followed the path, and now it could be time to start a new path. And that is okay. That is part of life. That is change. And I point to those ages of like 18 and 19 because, that's sort of like society's designated age to allow yourself, give yourself permission to, oh, she's young, she's still figuring stuff out. Or, oh, they're young, they don't know what they want to do with their life. Well, you could be whatever age, and this is why coming of age at any age is so important to me because you are allowed to change the path of your life whenever you want to. The currency, the true currency of this world is free will. And I think sometimes because of society, because of capitalism, because of patriarchy, because of like all these systematic things, we forget that we can decide what we want to do when we want to do it. And so I want to empower you to ask yourself what kind of life you actually want to create. That kind of is going to take some journaling, it's going to take some questions, and it's going to take some vulnerability that doesn't need to be public. Whatever you're going through, whatever you decide your speed of growth is, you don't have to necessarily share it with the world all the time. I know when I first started my therapy journey, I stopped writing a lot in this blog because, and I was even like concerned about it. Like maybe I didn't want to be a writer anymore. And I was talking to my therapist about it in one of our sessions. And she had reminded me that like you're kind of like learning how to ride a bike for the first time again. And so it's okay if you aren't ready to quite share what you've learned yet. And I think part of self love is knowing when something is really personal to you and knowing when it needs to still be belong to you. And then there comes a point where you might not know when that exactly is. It turns into a teaching moment or a lending a hand or a community type of environment where you can then share that knowledge with someone else. And there's no need to rush your growth, even if that's not something that you want as like an end goal to like help another person with their self-love journey, but more so be an example without even trying. is something that you could just like naturally do by living by example. I often forget that really we always just operate out of two buckets. It's either fear or love. Rejection is fear. Trust is love. Like one of the tools that have helped me kind of compartmentalize my thoughts and my motivations towards finding a lovely life that works for me when it needs to work for me in whatever season of life that I'm in is working backwards on the feeling that you're feeling right now. Recently, I took myself on a self-love date, which I hadn't done in a while. I went to see a university orchestra concert back to my alma mater, UT Austin, and it was a free orchestra concert. I was in orchestra myself. Music's a really big part of my life, has always been. And so I took myself to the environment of my old stomping grounds. I don't do very often because that past version of me is like a really sad ghost. And sometimes she can completely take over and engulf me. And I'm also writing a book about my college experience right now. And it's sort of like, oh, I can only take that in chunks, but it's healing. That is what I'm currently healing right now. So I took myself to that orchestra concert and then I went and had ice cream after. And I felt really lonely. And I hadn't felt loneliness in a while. I've been doing this for a really long time and I'm going to be really honest. It never like fully goes away in the sense that it appears like grief in waves, especially when you're kind of like in the midst of an old version of you that might still need the version of you that you are now to help heal them then, if that makes sense. And so I started sort of allowing myself to feel loneliness because I had pushed it back for so long, for a while, like I hadn't confronted it in a while. And so I allowed that version of me to like lean back into it and like work with her to feel that again. And then I started sort of compartmentalizing why I felt loneliness. And I deconstructed the feeling and worked backwards and figured out that it came from a desire that I knew that I felt like I was missing something in my life. And it was a desire that I needed to release shame around wanting and accepting that I was worthy of that desire, even before I even thought I needed to be the best version of myself in order to deserve it. I think that's a really I'm going to try my best to deconstruct that misconception about self love that you have to be the best version, perfect, healed version of yourself before you're ready for a relationship, because that's something that I believed for a really long time. And my therapist helped me unbelieve that when we worked together. And so there comes a time where I think the reason we avoid feeling things is because it comes from a place of us maybe at one point feeling a shame or embarrassment or guilt for depriving ourselves or not allowing ourselves to want something that we've always wanted. And the reason that it comes in waves in the form of grief is because grief isn't always about a person. Grief comes in waves of a life that you might have not had the chance to live yet. Maybe it's a job. It could be a thing. It doesn't always have to be a person. And I finally allowed myself to sort of accept the reason why I was feeling that grief because I realized I'm gonna I'm gonna quote Vision from WandaVision, which is a TV show that again another TV show that made me stop the TV and like really sit with that line of dialogue. Shout out to writers because they are the ones that are healing our souls even when we are just watching TV or reading books. I do that. I'm doing that right now, aren't I? Hee hee. Sorry, not sorry. You're welcome. Vision turns to Wanda and says, But what is grief if not love persevering? And I remember as I was like deconstructing the reason for my loneliness and the desire for that, I realized that I was only feeling that because it was coming from a place of love. And so circling back to like everything always has an origin and it's either love or fear. And the fear was sort of clouding the realization of that love. And I think once you sort of like separate or basically deconstruct what you're actually feeling and putting it in those buckets and letting like the smoke and mirrors like remove themselves, I think it's easier to sit with where you currently are in your life right now and know that where you were when you were 18 and when you are where you are now when you're like in your 30s or maybe 40s is different, but you're still connected to that. And that sense of loneliness or the sense of whatever it is that you're feeling always has a root of desire that you've always wanted to do. And following that desire is going to lead you to following the breadcrumbs of that desire, I think is going to lead you to the thing that you want that will fulfill you in the best way possible. And I keep going back to college because it was such a big defining freedom moment for myself and really feeling that I finally bet on myself. I think, well, I've always sort of been that wasn't the first time that I bet on myself. I've been a little Aries go-getter all my life, but I feel like college was an opportunity for me to really play with a blank canvas and do something that I've always wanted to do with a lot of fear because I was so young. I remember writing a blog post. Gosh, when did I write this? Like, 2017. I'm not even going to do the math on that. That was a long time ago. I was talking about milestones in life and how they can be so scary because they're sort of a sign that a season of life is coming to an end. It's hard to sort of let go of that goalpost because the portal into like a new version of adult life just it just is there's a lot of friction in jumping into a next chapter. The advice I gave was to not be so hard on yourself. Every goal from now on might come slow, slower some days or quicker others, and to enjoy each accomplishment and moment of growth because every step is getting you one step closer to where you meant to be. And I still stand by that statement. I'm talking so much about college and college grads, and that's because I'm interviewing my sister who just started college, and I wanted to get her perspective on things of and a lot of the things that we talked about really brought up some of the same things that I remember going through, but some of those same things were like a continuing theme, like I said, that have come up, like living alone and sitting in silence, what to do with free time. Because I was always someone that struggled with that. In high school and in college, in high school, I involved myself in a lot of things. And in college, I worked like 3 jobs while being a student full time. And I was always constantly out of the house because that was just my programming. And now I have sort of built a safe environment for myself where when I first realized that I had done that in this sort of new chapter of living alone, that I slowly built towards, gosh, what, 6 years ago? I'm now I started kind of like feeling like I needed to be out of the house, but I didn't want to be out of the house. And then realized that I was always in that fight or flight mode. And for the first time in my life, realizing that I wasn't. And I finally felt at peace in my own environment. And it was a new feeling that I wasn't quite used to, that I didn't know how to handle it. Like, I didn't know what peace felt like. I didn't know what relaxing meant. And that and I think a lot of times we sort of keep going on autopilot, even when life chapters start to come up in our life. And I want to give you permission to release whatever programming is holding you hostage to you not being able to feel safe. Because I think safety is one of the most important building blocks for self-love journeys because you need to be able to trust yourself and you need to be able to allow yourself to feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to dive into self-love conversations with yourself in order to lean into the grace that you're going to need throughout your self-love journey for yourself as you continue to evolve and create a life that you love. I can't wait for you to meet a possible version of yourself that also feels like might tap you on the shoulder and remind you that they're really proud of you and how far you've come. And they might remind you of a couple of things that you might still want to do in your life because you still have time, free will. Remember, you can do it. Cheers to probably one of the most authentic and real people that I've ever met and probably will ever meet, my sister Jessi.
Is this like iCarly?
Is this like iCarly? Yes. Who's iCarly? Who's Sam?
Maybe I'm Sam.
And I'm iCarly.
Yeah, because it's the iCarly show, and then
Is this
your
Spencer?
It kind of looks like Spencer.
This is episode 2 of the Find a Lovely Life podcast, and I am interviewing my J's, which I often refer to as Jessi and Jude. Jessi came first. She even has a J stamp.
Yep.
Ready to use in the future.
Harsh criteria.
For third honorary. Or not for, never mind. We're not going to go into that. How are you, sister?
I'm good. Sister, how are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling good about this episode. I'm really excited to talk to you because you actually motivate me to love myself more.
That's surprising to me.
Why is that surprising to you?
Because you're older than me.
So, backstory of our life.
You
We're
were born
first. And that's it.
That's the story.
We are 12 years apart, but in that 12 years, I feel like we're pretty close.
Surprisingly, yes.
Yeah, surprisingly, yes. I do feel like at a certain point, well, before she could talk, I very much like eldest daughter, and then we kind of became really good friends. When would you say we became really good friends? Like past like the sister phase almost.
Maybe like high school?
Or
like
yeah, when
middle
you were in,
school?
I think middle school, high school, and surprisingly, well, I guess not so surprisingly, I feel like every book that I write, just serendipitously, the character that I'm writing happens to be your age.
I love that for me.
I love that for me too because it's such a great way to.
You're welcome for being your inspiration.
Thank you for being my muse. Enough about us, the duo, the sisters. Why don't you tell us something that you love about yourself, Jessi?
I don't know. I think I'm pretty like honest and real. And I like that a lot about myself. I don't like sugarcoating things. I like to just keep it how it is. You have very good firsthand experience with that. But
I do really love that about you because I feel like you do it in a way where it is out of love and it's a perspective that
I'm about to love.
yeah, but we both kind of are.
Yeah, we are sisters.
Where? Jude is now the producer behind the camera. Wish you could see his face. What's one thing that's sort of bringing you a lot of joy right now?
Well, I just started the show called The Summer I Turned Pretty. I'm kind of late to the hype.
It's okay.
But it's really good, and my friends recommended it to me. And so we've kind of just been like bonding over it and like talking about it. and
Mhm.
we watched it together yesterday too. So I don't know. It's just like such a girly, like fun show. And they have like a lot of Taylor Swift songs in it.
Hey.
And like the love moments where it's like fits perfectly. I don't know. I just like it a lot.
Shout out to Jenny Han, who's an icon with that contemporary coming of age romance, which I think is what I love about sort of those shows is like that coming of age feel that reminds you of like times where like your first crush or a lot of firsts. And I think one of the things that I like to kind of remind myself in like self-love journeys is that, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I feel like a lot of coming of age moments in life sort of get, or we feel like we only have that opportunity to do that when we're your age, which, how old are you?
19.
No, I knew that. I don't know why I
What
reacted
were you
that way.
gonna say?
I I don't know. You get mad at me sometimes for like forgetting your age.
It's okay. I know you're older and my brain is kind of.
My brain is smart. I think that's something that I always sort of like, the reason I like sort of saying that coming of age is like we're always coming of age, like regardless of age, but the age that you are right now, you just started college
Yep.
recently. And I remember that being such a pivotal chapter in my life and something that was like really important for me to kind of really start to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So why don't you tell us about, this new chapter in your life and how that's been going for you?
Well, first of all, wait, I'm not go back to that coming of age thing because the show basically the first season is when she's 16 and like
Mm,
I lost my whole 16 to COVID.
mm,
So
yeah.
like watching that and I thought like 16 was going to be like the epitome of youth, like,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
but I spent all of 16 in quarantine. So like watching that show and she's like going out and all that, I'm just like, yeah, that's what 16 should have been like.
Oof.
But yeah, so it's like kind of nice and like healing in a way.
Yeah.
But I think about going back to college, I don't know. I think I always had like this idea of what college would be like. And in a way, it's kind of been that, but also like not to the extreme that I thought it would be.
Mm,
Like I've gone out a bit and like,
yeah.
you know, but I feel like people make it seem like so much more fun than it actually is.
Mm,
And I don't know. I think now I'm like kind of at the point where I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I guess like in high
yes.
school, like
Uh-huh.
it was like I felt it more because like I was taking classes that I didn't like care about like at all.
Yeah.
But now I'm like taking classes that like actually are supposed to help me like in my career.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, what if like I don't even end up doing this?
Mm,
And yeah. I mean, I like the classes I'm taking. It's just like I know there's like more than just like getting good grades. Like
yeah.
I have to do more,
Yeah.
but like I don't know the more.
Yeah. That's funny because that was Janessa's word for the year.
The more?
More.
Oh.
Janessa is our first guest on the episode one. We talked about more.
Why is it two words? It's not one word.
Yeah, I think, but I feel like it's refreshing to hear that because I feel like there's a lot of things in life where you kind of have that great expectation of how it's going to go. And then when you get to that point and then you suddenly realize it's almost like there's this like figuring out point in between where you really, really want something and then you get it. And then you're kind of like,
Literally, yeah.
is this
Like,
what I actually wanted? It doesn't, I think it's sometimes it's like we attach that to something, a feeling more that we want and attach it to like moving or like starting a new major or like something like that. And then it's when it feels empty and still like not satisfying, it can feel like you're lost.
yeah. But I think it's all, I also have to remind myself that it's like just the beginning. It is. Like, I'm not like, but then also this year has gone by so quickly. Like, I'm
Mm,
almost done with my freshman year.
mhm.
And I feel like I haven't really like done anything.
But you've done so much.
Enlighten me. 'Cause
Give you some kudos. Okay. So my sister moved into an apartment on her own,
I did do that.
which is a really big adjustment
It
from,
definitely is.
yeah, from living with your parents for so long or just living alone in general at any period of your life, I think is a really big new chapter. And you get to sort of like decorate, like, there's the fun part of it and like decorating and like finding things that you really love. You get to call a place your own. But then the other part that like nobody tells you like so much on Pinterest, like when you're making all the boards of like your apartment, is how much loneliness catches up with you.
Yep.
And I think that was one of the hardest things about living alone for the first time for me is that I was so excited to like finally have the space to do like creative adventures that I wanted to do. I even named the second bedroom that we're in the
The creative
creative
room.
room, which turned into my office because I work from home now. But
I mean,
it
your
was
work is
pretty creative.
creative, so
it still fits. It still fits the name. But I think a part of that was building up to that excitement. And I've also been talking to some of my friends about that moment of you're getting like you kind of get past the point of like, oh, I'm starting this new chapter. Do I still want to do this? And then adjusting the motivation as to why I'm doing it. Because after I like set up this room and like got really creative and like started doing things, it was almost like I felt the loneliness was still there. Like nothing that I did would remove that, no matter how much I like distracted myself from it. And even now, like 7 years into this self love journey myself, I feel like the loneliness still creeps up to me like grief. And having those moments where I'm having to face trauma that I haven't, or I've pushed back, or like thought, and we talk about intrusive thoughts a lot and we're like each other's safe space for intrusive thoughts, which can be really loud when you're alone. Do you feel like living alone has been one of the hardest adjustments for you so far in this new chapter of your life?
definitely. Because I don't live on campus,
Yeah.
and so it's, like, harder for me to coordinate hanging out with people. Like, if we wanna go
Mm,
out, the logistics are harder because like, I have to take Uber or, like
yeah.
and so, I don't know, it just makes things harder and, like, in the beginning, I it was, like, really, really hard in the beginning to adjust to everything, especially because like, I'm, like, going to the grocery store now, I'm, like, doing all this, like, stuff by myself, but I found, like, living alone, like, the actual, like, physical part of it, not that hard because,
Yeah.
like, I kinda grew up alone
Mm.
because you and Daniel moved out really
Sister.
young. Like, by the time I was 7, I was, like, the only child.
Emotional support
So,
in
like
for the
so, like, I was always used to it, and it
yeah.
always was, like, peaceful for me.
Judas here on the bed now because he sensed the emotional support need. Good job.
Ah,
Aw.
don't lick that. I'm just kidding, paper cut. But I think now it's a lot better because, like, in the beginning, I was so scared to, like, go anywhere alone.
Yeah.
But now, like, I feel like the more I push myself I'm fine.
He's
The more I push myself to, like, go
support those
out
programming.
or, like, stay a little later on campus and stuff,
Yeah.
it feels better.
Mhm.
Something that how I, like, deal with it,
Yeah.
like, whenever like, I've been at the apartment for a while, like, when I haven't gone out or whatever, and it usually gets worse, like, in the middle of the semester when, like, I have a lot of work, so I
Yeah.
can't really, like, go anywhere. I'll usually, like, set apart time to, like, do something creative, cause that makes
Mm.
me feel like I'm showing up for myself in a way,
Mm.
and it's just, like, fun. Like, I'll, like,
I love that.
make a recipe that I've, like, been wanting to make for a long
Mhm.
time, or, like, I'll do, like, a makeup look that I have saved. I don't know. It just makes
Yeah.
it more fun. Makes me feel like I'm not, like, just moping around,
Which is
basically.
okay to do sometimes. I feel
Well,
like
yeah, but
I've been learning I can distract myself with all these like creative things, but if I don't allow myself to actually feel the loneliness, it catches up to me.
yeah, but
Um,
there's a point where I'm tired of feeling it
I
and I just
know,
wanna
I
get
know,
up.
I know, and I but that's one of the things I love about you is that you are multi-creative and there's been always so many stages in your life that you have like a lot of creative passions, one of them being cooking and baking. Jude, chill.
Oh,
Okay,
Jessie,
there
good
we
boy.
go.
Oh.
Jesse and Jude have a love-hate relationship. So one of your creative passions is makeup, and you kind of tapped into that a little bit. Not this semester,
Last
last
semester, yeah.
semester, where you kind of like were really brave. I'm gonna give you kudos for this. Do you want to talk a little bit about the organization and why you decided to kind of sign up for it?
Yeah. So I signed up for this org called Hooked Magazine um on campus, and basically it's just an editorial magazine with like different committees that come together and like create an actual like magazine, like a published work. And like it's just people like expressing themselves, and like there's this committee that like writes stories, and then people creative, which like basically creates the whole look for the magazine article. And so I joined the creative team unexpectedly, actually, because I put it as
Mm.
my second option because I
Mm.
was too scared to apply for it first, but then they put me in it.
Ooh, but the universe did what?
And so I put makeup artist. I applied for that and I got in very unexpectedly. I was like one of six. I don't know. I guess nobody applied for it or something, but they put me in.
So the universe put you in this creative secondary choice of yours
Yes.
instead because you deserved to be there in the sense where it fulfilled a creative itch that you wanted to scratch.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, this is the magazine. It looks very professional.
It is.
And it's cool to have like my name in it.
Your name is
Um,
in it.
for
I accidentally manifested
oh my
assistant
god,
creative director in it because I thought
yeah,
that's what it
I can't
was.
even. Yeah, and I did her makeup for that.
Yeah, she was the hair and makeup
Yeah,
artist
so it has my name for 2 articles that I was hair and makeup artist for.
and the masthead
What?
is where all the list of people's names
Oh,
are at the beginning
yeah,
of the
yes,
magazine.
that. Um, yeah, I mean, it was looking back on it. I'm glad that I did it. Would I do it
Me
again?
too.
Probably not. But just because it was very anxiety inducing, and I don't like jumping into something when I don't know what I'm doing.
Fair.
And I did not know what I was doing.
But you figured it out.
I did. I guess I did. But now this semester I'm on the marketing team, which is more my style.
Yeah,
So
but it also helped you kind of figure out, like which is one of the things I love about college is it's an opportunity for you to kind of figure out what you want to do and kind of follow different paths
oh yeah,
that
for
might
sure.
open up different possibilities for you, which is sort of what I want to say also helped you kind of start thinking about switching from PR to advertising.
Oh yeah. Okay, it definitely did because I really enjoyed like the whole creative aspect of like coming up with the look and stuff
Yes.
more than actually like doing it hands on.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned. And then I started thinking like looking into what like creative directing was, and I found that there's a program in the advertising department that like teaches you how to do that,
Mhm.
but you have to be an advertising major to even apply for it.
Mhm.
So that's what made me think like want to change my major. So
Mhm.
yeah, in a way I guess it was helpful, but it was like actually so stressful. Like I can't even like emphasize it enough. Like I would not do it again.
I know. I
Like,
was there. Not there, but I was point of contact.
yeah.
But I'm proud of you for doing it
Dang.
because I think it's important to try new things, not so much to like just say that you did it, but to like really figure out what you actually liked about it and like what you just said. Like
Yeah.
you went in knowing that you did at what point really love doing makeup, but then actually doing it in a professional setting like that, adjusting the reason behind that potential creative passion and moving it into I really like creative direction and strategy in that sense. And sometimes you have to like try new things to figure out, oh, I don't like doing this. Or I actually really like this one thing about this. Let me try to follow this breadcrumb to see if it opens up a different door for me in the future, which I think you're continuing to follow.
Yeah. In a way, like doing the makeup it was, like, kind of natural for me. Like, I had remembered if anybody watches Glow Up on
Oh,
Netflix,
yeah, I remember you got me into
and,
that.
like, I was, like, trying to act like the makeup artist and, like, talking to the model and all that. "So what's your major?" So, like, "Oh, that's really cool." Like, oh my god. But I also, like, did not know what I was doing, but
But I think,
in a
like
way, like, I was in my element, but also, like, out of my comfort zone.
ooh, but I feel like that is, I think, the place where you kind of rise like a phoenix in a way, where it's almost like you decide, "This is who I want to be in this moment, and this is where my boundaries are and what I don't like," and it's a really
Yeah.
important part of answering the question of what direction you want to go into life in life in general. And also, like, even tying it back to, like, self-love, you figured out something that made you uncomfortable, but something that you really liked, to see, like, how that made you feel and fulfill you in a way that made you happy.
Yeah, like, even when I was there, we went to a professional studio to do some of the photos, and, like, even just, like, standing there backstage, I was kinda like, "Huh." Like, it felt right,
Yeah,
but, like, also, like, the position that I was, like, the makeup artist, not
yeah.
so much, so it was kinda like the setting made sense,
Mhm.
but the position, I don't know, so then I was like, "Well, damn, what's the position gonna be?" So now I have to figure that out. But, yeah.
But you liked being on a set.
Yeah, it was fun. Then I was like, should I be the model? Should I be the photographer? Should I be the creative director? But yeah.
But I think what you just described is sort of like asking yourself those questions helps to visualize yourself as possibly being that.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and, like, even if you don't have the answer to that, because you're asking yourself those questions, you're now sort of planting a seed in your mind that's gonna come up when you do see someone, like, modeling, or when you take a class and, like, they're talking about creative direction, like, the seeds are gonna start to, like, water themselves and start to poke you and say, like, "Hey, this is really cool," and then, like, once you're open to those possibilities, then new things will kind of appear, and then it'll be up to you if you wanna walk through those doors or not.
True.
True. I think one of the things too about living by yourself, starting a new chapter, and sort of figuring things out in the chapter or season of your life that you're in now has to do a lot with freedom. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, how important have you found freedom to be in your self-love journey so far where you are now in life?
I think it's very important because whenever you're not like, well, you could still like be by yourself even if you live with other people, but like when you're not like in control of like your space or like
Mm,
your what you're able to do, it's a lot harder. So I think being able to like be comfortable with like sitting with your thoughts too, and also just
mm,
like being comfortable with like being in control
yeah,
is like something that you really need to like be okay with yourself, I guess.
yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense, and you're totally right. I feel like having or taking time, even if you do, like you said, like, live with other people, to, like, spend time with your own
Oh yeah.
thoughts is really important, because I remember, I think I told you this, like, one of the first things my therapist had me do when I first started working with her was draw, like, a cast of characters to find what voices were coming up in my head, and I would draw a voice of, like, an intrusive thought or something that was like an imposter syndrome sort of thing, and I would draw a character attached to it, and it was up until, like, 5 pages that I finally heard, like, my voice and what I was actually, like, telling myself.
I don't think you ever told me that. Or maybe I
Really?
just forgot.
And I think that was such like, eye-opening exercise for me, because I didn't realize how much of those intrusive thoughts were actually from other people and not actually from me, and the voice that was screaming to me that I finally recognized as my own was always out of, like, a creative
Mm.
motivator. Like it was I want to play or I want to write or I want to like eat something or some food that I was like never allowed to eat or something like that. And so it was tied to that sense of freedom because they were versions of me that I hadn't quite sorted out yet at this point in my therapy journey, but that would kind of like tell me and want me to give them permission
Okay,
or
I remember that.
freedom. Yeah, now you remember. uh, to like be able to express themselves and start to love themselves in a different way that I hadn't allowed them to because I was just so caught up in having the other voices dictate what I wanted to do with my life.
Real.
Yeah. Cheers. So I guess like talking about like younger versions of me like that would sort of pop up. What's something that you would tell younger you today?
Hmm. I'm thinking as if I didn't write it down. Uh,
Yeah, play it up. Play it up.
probably not to care as much what other people think.
Ooh, I still
I,
struggle with that.
growing up a lot, I was like always a straight A student.
Mm.
I've still, well, I do tie a lot of my worth
She's
to
a
academic
Virgo.
validation.
My little Virgo, my little Virgo.
But yeah, I do tie a lot of my worth to academic validation, but that's a different topic. But
That's a
moving,
whole other episode,
yeah.
girl.
But like growing up, I was always like everybody knew me as kind of like the nerd and like the
Mm,
smart girl, and so I found it really like would get to me, and like I used to like dumb myself down a lot for other
mm.
people, and like growing up now, I'm kind of like, bitch, why'd you do that? Like it's just so stupid. And like a good example is probably like orchestra.
Ooh, we're gonna go there?
Yeah, we're
All
gonna
right,
go
let's go
there.
there.
Yeah. So
We are both cello sisters, and at one
yes.
point we could have been a band.
So I joined orchestra in middle school, and I was always like first or second chair. Like I was like, and I just like did it because like I really liked it and I enjoyed it. Playing
Mm-hmm.
music, music has always been like a big part of my life, like listening to it or like making it. But like when I got to high school, I made the top orchestra, and I was the
Mm-hmm.
only freshman out of like every school that made it. And so like people were like shit on me a lot for
Yeah.
that, and like there was a point where there's like people that had gone to my school that were saying like, oh, that's why you're all alone in chamber because like
Mm,
you're like the only one there, yeah, blah blah blah, like saying shit like that. And like I guess that like obviously really got to me. Like I was only like what, like 15.
yeah.
And that's like one of the reasons that I ended up quitting, because like I just didn't want to deal with that. And like
Yeah.
also, I mean, this is kind of separate, but the whole thing kind of got toxic. Like it became like really competitive, and like
Yeah.
I just didn't enjoy it like I used to anymore. And I noticed that like I was like forcing myself to play when like I didn't used to do that,
Yeah.
and I hated that. So that's like an example of like how I literally let people like influence me that bad to like
Mm-hmm.
ruin it. Like they literally ruined it for
Mm-hmm.
me. And like looking back, it just like makes me sad because I'm just like, damn, like I really did enjoy like
Yeah.
doing that, but I let them get to me and I quit.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also like really wanted to do my nails, so that's like a separate thing. So like I
Well, explain to people what
so
just
when
quickly what
you
you mean
play
by
the
that.
cello or any string instrument, you can't have long nails because you need like the tip of your finger to like press the strings. And I'd always wanted nails. And
Another self-love, self-care
it was
thing.
like the top of the, what is it? Tip of the iceberg, like not being able to get my nails done. Like, damn, toxic. People are talking shit about me, and I can't get my nails done. Like, so yeah, that was like
No, real.
that was another factor.
But I guess
But yeah,
that's a good sort of I think music's always been a really big part of my life too, and we both grew up playing it and like having it be in some form part of our life, and that's like one creative thing I haven't really totally gotten back into. I mean, like I'll dabble here and there, but I think it's really sad when we
no
like
boy.
here comes Judy. He'll be fine. It's really sad when like sometimes we it's just easier to let go of something that we really really love because the pressure from
Mm.
other people is stronger than our love for it. Not that it's like not a priority and not important to us, but it's almost like like a self-destruction of like that inside out like
The
island.
island. Oh my god.
Like a huge island destruction, like self-destruct button because the pressures of like trying to fit in and like actually be connected to people is sometimes more of a motivating factor than it is to like do something you really love,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm.
I've sacrificed a lot of things that I, loved because I wanted to have friends, which then they ended up not being very good friends. But we rebuild and we find new friends.
New islands. We make new
We
islands.
make new islands.
I
Definitely.
mean, in a way, like I don't regret it because like I know now I probably wouldn't. Like it was like it
Yeah,
served that its
same.
purpose for like that era of my life.
Yeah,
And like, hey, I still have the cello. So
I do too.
if I ever want to get back into it, even though it's so probably so out of tune now and the
I
strings are probably
almost
popping
asked
off.
you if you would come over and like tune my cello for me.
Do I even? I think I remember.
I didn't want to give you anxiety, so I didn't ask you. Music's always been really important. And even like writing music. Fun fact,
I had a phase.
the little jingle at the beginning of this podcast is one of my original songs that I
Yep.
would always play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know me, well, really just my family, like they recognized it
Yep.
immediately. It's like your piano song.
I have special privileges because I knew it. Insider look.
Uh, but we also wrote music in terms. I mean, that song had lyrics to it. You used to write songs too, poems.
I wrote that song.
No, I did.
Oh, I was like, no,
No, I wrote lyrics to that song. And you used to write. You remember you recently found like a book.
Oh yeah, I did used to write songs because I wanted to be like Selena Gomez really bad.
Shout out to Selena Gomez. We love Rare Beauty.
I remember you still have your little red songbook in the drawer in my room.
At home, home? Oh, you didn't take it with you?
Oh,
Speaking of songs, poetry has become something that you've been really getting into. It's kind of tied to
yes,
that lyrically.
because I love music very, very much. Anybody who knows me knows I'm like obsessed with like just
She is
lyrics
really
and
into the music scene.
yes,
So much she might go into the music industry.
possibly. We're thinking about it. but but I was like, I had saw on TikTok that Lana Del Rey has a poetry book, and I was like, oh my
Oh yeah, I
god,
remember you telling
like
me about this.
basically anyone who makes music is basically poetry. So I'm like, huh, why don't I like get
Mm.
into that? And I know that you had read some Rupi Kaur
I
poetry books, and I was like, I always see hype about them, so I was like, why don't I pick one up? And so I bought Milk and Honey,
Mhm.
and I read it, and I really, really enjoyed it. So
Why don't you read us one of your favorite poems from Milk and Honey?
don't mind if I do. Bookmark. So for context, there's two little light bulbs that are lit, drawn on the poem. But it goes, I do not want to have you to fill the empty parts of me. I want to be full on my own. I want to be so complete I could light a whole city. And then I want to have you because the two of us combined could set it on fire.
The Girl on Fire. That's not what it's called. I
No,
just thought
that's
of
not.
that.
It doesn't have any titles.
I love that. Well, why do you love it?
I love it. I love that poem because I think it's very important. Like whenever I've, for context, I've been in a relationship for 2 years, and I think it's very important when, in general, to like not lose yourself to like a partnership. That could also be like a best friend or like
Yeah.
anything. And I don't know. I feel like there's times where sometimes I worry that that might happen, and like I find myself kind of like losing a little bit of myself.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, obviously, I'm self aware. Like, I'm not gonna like lose myself.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's important to like nurture your own like passions and stuff independently and like grow independently, but together, not like
Yeah.
yeah, in order to like be able to like be yourself and not like lose yourself.
Yeah.
So that really like related to me. Also because like I don't know, like being in a relationship like two like what is it? What's the word? Like if when you're both like successful.
Like a power couple?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's like bad.
A power
Yeah,
couple?
being like a power couple, that's like badass. So
That is one of my life goals is to be in a power couple.
yeah,
Because I feel I that poem resonates a lot with me too. And I mean the whole reason I started this self-love journey was to like try to make sure that I would look in the mirror and love myself as much as someone else would want to one
yeah,
day, and like having that always be like the most important relationship in my life, and also having that fear of like completely losing myself to it.
yeah.
And I remember my therapist saying at one of my sessions, like, you can love yourself as much as you want to, Monica, but when you get in a relationship,
It's
it's
completely different.
completely different. And so it's like me trying to like prepare myself, like in the like, what books do I read? I gotta do it. I gotta be the best version of me. And she's like, that's all fine and dandy. Like I can't wait for you to like keep like there comes a point where you decide to like become a part of someone else's life, and knowing that that's something that I really look forward to. Like, I think we're both really conscious about having our own lives in a relationship and
Oh yeah.
being always checking back in with ourselves to make sure that this is something that we still want. Is like this helping us,
Yeah.
and like even if, like you said, if it's with friendships too, like auditing or like checking in with yourself to make sure the relationship is still serving you for the best possible life that you want to create for yourself.
For sure.
Well, I discovered Rupi Kaur a couple years ago. I want to say I introduced her to you.
You did.
Okay, good. You weren't gonna fight me on that, like the
No.
family fights me on Coldplay. Actually, Homebody was one I used to like be more active in running a book club for Find a Lovely Life. It's called Find a Lovely Book. I've reprioritized things since then, but Homebody was one of the books that I chose to read because it was the time of the pandemic and I just felt like it was so
Homebody.
perfect.
Yeah.
And she released it during the pandemic at that point,
Oh,
but
that makes sense. I didn't know
the poem I wanted to read kind of embodies sort of like it's literally called Journey, and like I thought it just kind of every time I read it, it reminds me that I'm still on a journey. So here it goes. There is nothing wrong with you. This is growth. This is transformation, protecting yourself, getting lost in the noise, figuring it out, feeling used, uncared for, losing hope, burning out. This is fear. This is processing. This is surviving. This is being alive.
Real.
Real talk. Rupi is so real.
I know.
I saw her live.
I know. That's why I
I was
got
actually one
into
of
it.
my self love dates that I took myself on. And I hadn't taken myself on a self love date in a while because during the pandemic, it was really hard for me to go out and do things. And so this was one of the first times I finally went back out and did something like that. And it was truly like a really beautiful experience, but it also reminded me of loneliness again because there was like a time where she was like, turn to the person you came with and tell them that you're so happy that they're in your life. And like, I had no one next to me. So I was like, ghost of loneliness, like, I actually like, I used to work at the theater that she performed at in college, and I felt her presence, the
like
past
past you.
version
Yeah.
of me, like looming in there, so lonely and sad. And I kind of just turned to her and was like, hey, I'm glad you're here with me.
That's sweet.
And sometimes when I go on self love dates now, I try to anchor myself to a past version of me that really would have loved the experience. So I don't feel as alone and like I'm almost taking them out on a date instead of feeling like, oh man, like letting the intrusive thought of like, you are alone.
Oh my god.
But I think Ruby is really important for me for that purpose. And she's a really great poet. So I'll add her books and a link down below.
Yeah, I still want to read The Sun and Her Flowers. That's the last one I
Yeah,
have
I read
left.
that in like one sitting.
Next time I go to Target, I'm gonna get it.
And I love her work so much. And I guess like talking about that, like as a journey, as life, you're in a really special season of life, I think, right now. You're still sort of figuring out what the future means for you and where you want to go. What advice would you give to someone that's sort of figuring out what they want to do with their life in the season, in whatever season they're in right now?
I'd probably say just take it one day, one step at a time. Like go with the flow. Like
Mm,
if you like focus too much on like the future, even the past,
yeah,
you're gonna like lose where you are right now. And like cherishing the present is really important to me. I feel like because like whenever like looking back now, I look back at like a different time in my life and I'm like, oh, that was like so nice or whatever. And you get like nostalgic for it, but like in the future, you're gonna get nostalgic for the time you're in right now.
yeah,
So like I think it's really important to just not like stress out too much about the future and just kind of like I mean,
yeah.
not that like you shouldn't have goals or like
Right, right.
anything, but like just try to live in the moment more. I think
I love that.
that's what I'm trying to do. Thanks, mom, for telling me that to do one day at a time.
Take it one
Shout
day
out
at a time. Shout out to
to
mom.
mom.
Hi, mom.
Love you, mom.
We have the same mom.
Yeah, I know.
How would you love to be remembered?
um, ooh, I feel like I'm kind of young to answer that. I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't need to be related to death, but just like when you walk into a room or when
Oh,
you're
oh
in a
okay.
creative space, like what is the sort of mark you want to leave?
Somebody that's authentic.
Jude farted.
Ugh.
That's how Jude wants to be remembered.
Oh my god. Okay, well, I would like to be.
This isn't like a 40 experience.
So
I'm not.
bad.
Maybe it's just because I live with him and I don't.
Smells like burning
We don't have to
eggs.
describe. We don't have to describe Jude's fart to
You
the
just smelled it. Oh
audience.
my god. Say, very passionate person. So I think
Mm,
I'd like to be remembered as that. Also very authentic. So
mm.
probably passionate and authentic.
I will say you are both of those things, and that's how I would describe you as well.
Really?
Jude agrees. Why don't you give us some lovely advice as a farewell, Jude? And Jude is back in the chat trying to ask for forgiveness. I'd love to return the favor by pulling a card for you.
I'm down. Animal deck, please.
She knew what she wants. She knows what she wants.
I
Okay.
wish they had a capybara card still.
I know. I'm using the Animal Spirit deck, which is one of my favorite. It's kind of like an oracle deck, but I love it because it's divided up by. Yes, Jude loves it too for obvious reasons because they're animal cards and they
And Jude
are.
happens to be an animal, so
Well, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, they're divided up by different, the four elements. So you have animals that are representative of air, water, fire, and earth. And fire, so not like breathing dragons or anything, but more so like speed and like what they represent. And then the last one is divided up by spirit, which is organized by the chakra system. And that's enough about that setup. You want to hold my mic while I shuffle the
yeah.
cards?
Anything you'd like to say?
Jude, choose the card for us. One card for you. Since you're the animal.
The owl.
The owl. You know, I saw an owl.
What does it mean? I think, well, I saw it at the capybara place. That was the last place I saw it.
You saw an owl recently?
When I went with you to when we saw the capybara, they had an owl. That was the last time I saw it.
Yes. I actually saw an owl recently randomly on a walk, like middle of the day. It
That
was
would
just
literally
staring
scare
me
me so
down.
much.
I knew why. I was asking a question to the. Yeah, Jude saw it too. I don't know if you heard that. The owl, which is an animal of air, which I totally get why this.
It's a bird and it flies.
Yeah, but I was gonna go a little bit deeper. Air is associated with the mind a lot, the element of air.
This is making sense already.
And so I think being in your mind a lot and having
Unfortunately.
thoughts that kind of put you in directions that sometimes you kind of lose control over, going down that thought path a little bit. And the owl is here to remind you that you are wise and you know where you're going
Thank you, Owl.
and you know your path. Ooh, ooh. But I really love the descriptions of this book, so I'm gonna like pull something from here because the author of this book is just so wonderful. Yeah, abundance, clairvoyant, yes, treasures. Arg. It's almost like trust trust your own voice.
I'll take that into consideration.
And yeah, I'm gonna think about that a little bit before I actually do it. I'd say trust your own voice and know that not you are not your thoughts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that's the card. Jude, approved? Aw, he kissed the mic. Well, thank you so much for joining the iCarly show. Spencer?
I'm gonna eat it.
She's licking the mic. Thank you, sister. I love you.
Thank you for having me. I love you too.
I hope that conversation was inspiring. I know sometimes like I told my sister at the very beginning, she motivates me to love myself more because maybe it's because part of me like still feels like I want her to look up to me, or I feel like I think I often always say that our inner child is our biggest guide. And a lot of times, my sister sort of reminds me of different versions of myself throughout my life that kind of reflect back that version of who I was at whatever age she's at. And I think those are the sort of images I'm looking for to be kinder and gentler to myself as I continue my self love journey. One of the lovely letters that I have that I kind of immediately gravitated towards after that conversation is one that I wrote actually not too long ago. Well, what is time? 2 years ago. And I think this was around the time where I was making a really big life chapter change. And I was getting sort of frustrated with myself because I didn't really have all the pieces to my puzzle quite yet. And I am not as comfortable with the unknown. I am a planner. I need to know sort of like what my next steps are in order for me to feel it's a sense of security for me. And so, kind of diving into the unknown blindly, I kind of was, I'll probably talk a little bit more about this next episode, not giving anything else away, but it definitely ties to this whole theme of life chapters. The letter I'm going to read is called Dear Lovely, Stop Comparing Timelines. Dear Lovely, stop comparing timelines. If time wasn't a thing, what would you be doing right now? A picnic in a meadow with some cheese and a good book sounds lovely. No more rushing, no more thinking you're running out of time. When we're in our 20s, we think we have to know what we want to do with our lives. We have a plan. And right when we turn 30, we think, is that really the plan I wanted? Some may call this moment a midlife crisis, which to them I say no. There's a genre in books called coming of age. I'm sure you've heard of it. I believe we're always coming of age, and it doesn't necessarily always mean a number. I know you're exhausted, chasing this finish line to a goal that seems unattainable, and with every new obstacle, you start to question if everything you're doing is even worth it. It's the invisible clock that's making you feel that way. If you had another year, would you feel better? If you had another hour, would you be able to finish? I think the concept of time is what feeds our stress. My love, you are not running out of time because you're exactly where you need to be right now. I know you thought, planned, wished, worked so hard to get here. Can we take a second and just admire that? I'm not saying to take a trip down memory lane unless you want to, But if you could go back and tell 15-year-old you that you're doing the thing, that it might not look like you thought it would, but gosh, oh my gosh, has it been quite the journey. We're always so worried about others, how far they are, how much more we have to go. What if I told you that every path is different and there is no timeline that is the same? You might have a moment where you share a path with someone for a moment. Relish the victory together. That same person might decide to forge a different path after that victory with you and leave it all behind. But what if you kept going? Are you afraid of doing it alone? As you scroll on your phone to disassociate for a few hours more, can you do me a favor? Can you not compare yourself to how others choose to control their narrative? Can you not compare yourself to someone else's definition of success? Can you be gentle with yourself and remind yourself you're doing your goddamn best? Can you keep your eyes on your own beautiful painting? Because it's damn right exquisite and it's all yours. With love, Monica. And that's the episode. I hope you're inspired to love yourself a little more than you did yesterday, and you're on your way to finding a lovely life you love. If you want to read more about my self love journey, head over to findalovelylife.com. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast if you feel called to. Remember that your self love journey can start or restart at any point. There are no rules. Stay connected with us on social at Find a Lovely Life, or if you want to see more of Monica Life, you can find me at Lovely Monica, and that's spelled LOVELEEMONICAA. I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time.